when you look at your younger self, that ambitious, curious student, what would you tell her today?
That's what I would say to my younger me.
Welcome back to Beyond the Summit. I'm Amir Golshani, and every week we sit down with extraordinary people who faced life's toughest climbs and found new ways to define success, freedom, and purpose. My guest today is someone whose story bridges continents, cultures, and courage. Dr. Roksana Bahramitash is an Iranian-Canadian sociologist, writer, and filmmaker who has spent years studying women's lives, work, and resilience in some of the most challenging social and economic conditions in the world. She's written about how women create opportunities where none seem to exist, how faith and community can become powerful tools for survival, and how stories told honestly can change how we see each other. But what makes her story even more special is that her research and her life have walked the same road. She has explored the strength of others and lived the strengths herself. Roxana, welcome to Beyond the Summit. I'm so grateful you're here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And I'd like to say hello to people who are here listening to us. Let me tell you where I'm speaking from. I'm speaking from the unceded land of indigenous people of Mohawk. We hope that we will pay our share toward decolonization of their land.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's get back to the early days. You were born in Iran, came to Canada, and ended up building this powerful academic and creative career. What was life like growing up, and what experience shaped your curiosity about women, work, and society?
I was lucky enough to born at a time where there was a great deal of social transformation. It was in the 1960s, and there was Iran, like many other parts of the world, there was a lot was happening, like the civil rights movement, women's liberation. In Iran, it was just after the coup d'etat in 1953. And the whole atmosphere of where I was born in Tehran was extremely fertile. And I was exposed to great ideas and ideals. As I say, civil rights movement, Vietnam War, anti-colonial struggle of Algerian people. All in all, I think I was exposed. And then there was the Soviet Union, which was next to us, and we would be getting a lot of literature. So there was a clash of Iran, which was at the time very much aligned with the US under the Shah. And then there was the Soviet Union. And this was, and then at the same time was women's liberation movement. So all of this created a very unique, I would say, social circumstances, which made me to think a great deal. And I was specifically consumed by two very important questions. One was social justice, and that included economic justice. And the second one was gender justice.
That's amazing. It sounds like you were already observing human behavior even before you had a title for that. Then you moved to Canada. What was the biggest shock culturally or personally? And how did that shape your path?
I came to Canada with my children because I had to. I was running away from an abusive marriage. It was the only way. It was a one-way ticket. It was not really a choice. I was here because I wasn't able to go back. And it was here, do or die. So I really had to push through and make it through. And as they say, there are always angels that come to help you. And I think I was very successful. Imagine a woman, a mother of 4 children, just packing up and going to the other side of the world to start her life uh, all over again.
That's really fascinating. At the same time, touching. I bet you've been through a lot, but at the end, you become successful in your not only career but also raising 4 children, as you mentioned. Was there ever a moment you almost gave up when you mentioned the condition that actually forced you in a way to move to Canada? That you almost gave up, maybe because of cultural shock, finances, or doubt, but you decided to keep going anyway?
I think when you're a mother, you don't really have a choice because it's not about you anymore. It's about these 4 other people who, not really by choice, but nonetheless, you have brought them into the world and you bear a responsibility. You have to do what you have to do.
Can you tell the audience a little bit more about the early years of moving to Canada?
Well, I came to Canada first with 2 children, then the other 4. And I thought that what would happen to them if I gave up, if I died, or um, if I decided that I wasn't able to do anything. It was like a destiny. When you are doing something that you have to do, when there are 4 children relying on you, you cannot fail.
Absolutely. You have spent decades studying women who find the strength in tough circumstances. What moment made you say, this isn't just research, this is my calling?
When when I came to Canada with children, I was also starting a PhD at McGill. And I decided to make my thesis topic about the role of women in economic development. My interest in social justice was that had I have access to economic resources, I wouldn't have to struggle so much. Because when you walk away from an abusive situation, and I think millions of women do, millions of women flee situations where they are living with domestic abuse. They take their children, then they leave. And they end up paying for it by having to face harsh economic situations. When they flee and they relocate themselves in any parts of the world, in fact, it's not just cross-nationally, but it also happens that within countries, some women flee from domestic abuse to another part of the country. I was really in a very difficult economic situations. Having said that, at the university at McGill, people saw how hardworking I was. They gave me teaching assistantship, research assistantship. I also became sessional professors. So I was teaching, I was writing a thesis, and I was raising a family. And that never stopped me from my real passion, which was to write a thesis which would speak to women's lack of economic justice. And that's what my thesis is about. When you empower women economically, you are you are contributing to the improvement of health, education, a whole set of human development indicators. There is actually a very cross-national study, and I've indicated that in my writing, that men and women have different expenditure pattern. When men get money, they tend to spend their money on, no offense to men, to luxury goods. But when you give money to women, they spend on education, food, taking care of the sick.
I love that. In those early field studies, when you sat with women in their homes or workplaces, what a story or image from that time never left you?
Let me give you an example from Indonesia. I was working on a development project with the Canadian International Development Agency through the McGill Islamic Studies, and I was doing research. My research has always been sort of around female poverty, or rather women's economic empowerment. And I was traveling with a young woman behind her. When we arrived there, they put me on this Rolls Royce, black, really flashy car. And I said, oh God, I'm here to study women's poverty, and I'm put in this really expensive Rolls Royce to go around to see about women's poverty. So I got myself out of that. I linked with people who were women who were studying. She said, "You want to see?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Hop on my bicycle." I hopped on her bicycle, and she drove me to like really rural areas where there were no lights even. Finally, we got to a village, and I saw. That's what I saw. That's what I saw. I saw how women get together, uh, and they try to make things better. It was actually a month of Ramadan. I arrived there. They did their fast. They broke their fasting, and then they were sitting together. And I said, "What are they doing?" She said, "They are gathering money." I said, "What for?" She said, we're trying to we're trying to set up a sports center." Really? You don't have roads? You're thinking of a gym? She said, yes, because for these women, having a gym is important, because otherwise their boys get into fight. We want to get We want to set up gyms so our boys go, they do their exercise, and they don't cause trouble. So, that's how women's role in community can really be transformational. One of my biggest goals has been to listen. And I always say that wherever I go, I say, I'm here to listen, because they have the knowledge. And we need our development organizations to listen to them. They know what's right. They know what to do. And if we listen more, all these development projects would be better.
So I love that. What you mentioned, those are all human moments, and you can almost feel the courage in those moments. And I believe your life is full of those stories and experiences worth hearing. Thank you for sharing some of those moments. If those women were listening to this conversation right now, those that you have worked with, so in different parts of the world, what message would you want to send back to them?
Okay, let me just answer that in a weird way. At the border of Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. That's where I was. And there was a project, microcredit project. And I was there. My goal, I can be very idealistic. My goal was to set up an NGO that would sell there, because they have beautiful artifacts. My goal was to bring that artifacts and sell it in North America and take the money back. Anyway, obviously that didn't happen. But the reason I'm thinking of that was that I met two women. One of them, she gave me something like a braided, colorful robe. And I looked at it and I said, what is it? She said, this is something we have been making for generations. And now young people don't want it. I want to leave this with you. Please don't. What have I done to deserve this? So she gave it to me. She said, please preserve, because I think our next generation is going to lose that. If you ever ask me what made me continue, it was the courage, the stamina, the vision of women like her.
Yeah, resilience. And this is something that you have experienced yourself firsthand. I love that. Wonderful, so powerful and touching, experiences that you have had. One of the big themes in your work is how women define freedom in their own way, as you explained. From your experience, what does freedom look like for someone who has very few external options?
I think that's what is important is that for majority of women in this world, putting food on the table, it defines their freedom. Of course, legal freedom is important. Of course, freedom to dress as you wish is important. But what these mean if you can't feed your family? And in this world of rising poverty, rising economic inequality, rising environmental degradation, the focus of my work has been providing equal opportunity or access to economic resources.
So I really love that because everyone's definition of freedom is unique to themselves. So, one of the main concepts that we cover on Beyond the Summit podcast is how health fuels wealth and how both unlock freedom. So, it's integration of these three aspects. And there is a definition of each for each category of people based on their living condition, based on their demographics, based on their norms, society, beliefs. And I really love that the way that you put it. For some people, even putting food on the table is the definition of freedom, that they have something to eat. And it's very deep. It reminds me that freedom often begins inside us before anything changes on the outside. If you had to teach one lesson from those women to young people today, especially those chasing career success, what would it be?
I think that we are living in an age that things are rapidly changing, and that a lot of our wants and needs are defined in a very commercial way. If we are going to care about something, it's to care about our planet. I mean, look at the way this wildfire, look how the climate has changed. I mean, I certainly see it. A number of homeless in Montreal has grown. The number of young women who are disappearing.
Who do you blame this for mainly?
It's the way our society has shaped itself.
So there should be a root cause for these kind of transformational changes. So, as a sociologist, by looking at society and these shifts that's happening, why do you think these are happening and why now?
While the reality of the world is that this planet is burning, there are millions who don't have access to clean water, and we can do something. We can do something, if nothing, by it being educated.
Isn't it, in your opinion, isn't it because they are so engaged with their basic needs that they might not have the mood or time or energy to get involved? If you're engaged with your basic needs and how to provide for yourself, for your family, then It's hard to think, about those other priorities that are very important. What do you think about it?
I think you're right that especially with rising cost of livings, a lot of us just the increasing food crisis makes us think about how we're going to make ends meet. But at the same time, there is something fundamentally going in the wrong direction. And why we are consumed by making ends meet as, the real income of families is going down. And we know that by rising just the costs of basic living. These are real issues, but we have to keep perspective that just because we are struggling with our mundane, we should not stop questioning where this world is going. And I just think that we are living in an amazingly fortunate time, in a kind of a negative way, perhaps, that we are witnessing how an empire that was in power for 70 years is in decline. And another world order is coming up. And these are times of rethinking, reevaluating, being educated.
I see what you're doing. You're on a specific mission. It's not just that because you're passionate about others' lives, because you're on a mission of helping and empowering and sharing and raising awareness to pay your own share in order to help humanity at human level. I agree with you that everyone has to pay their own share, in order to raise awareness. I put it that way. You have written about how faith and community create resilience. Can you tell us a story where you witnessed community support to transform someone's life?
There was a time that community mattered. Like, and there are in many countries, community still matters. I'm a little upset is that the social media has created a golden life in another parts of the world, and people don't see their own potentials and their own beauty and what they can do locally. But you find them. You just have to have your eyes open and go to different parts of the world, and they are there. They are doing it.
I love that. Why do you think, even in wealthier countries, Western countries, so called developed countries, people sometimes feel so isolated?
Well, I think that development is a term that has to be really redefined. Development means, are we talking about economic development? Economic development is very much geared to certain type of economic production that goes for efficiency, whereas the undeveloped world has a different value system. To give you an example, among the indigenous community, practice of storytelling was part of community building. And what I see, I was recently in Colombia. I travel to Latin America quite often, and I see that, and even Iran, I see that life quality is a much richer. Because you have people around you, because people are more concerned about you, because people have more time for you. There's a better life quality than, things don't make you happy. Having a better car, having a more expensive house, they're not ultimately what makes you happy. What makes you happy is to belong to a community. And I think that it's not about things. It's about human relations.
That's such a deep truth. Community is wealth. If you could redesign how modern society works, What's one change you'd make so people don't feel so alone?
Well, I have my ideas. Make work schedule 3 times a week, 5 hours. That way you will get rid of unemployment. That way you will ensure people have more time for their families and friends.
I love that. Thank you. Roxana, you have faced some serious health challenges, and thankfully you've come through them. If it is okay to talk about, what was the journey like for you? What did it teach you about life and resilience?
Well, I had a near-death experience, and I think that that was a blessing. I was working as senior advisor for women's employment in Iran with the UN, and then I had this huge health crisis, which I nearly died. What it taught me was that we are not our job, and
I cannot agree more.
once that position was taken away, because I was sick and I couldn't do that anymore, I started to discover myself that I am not a senior advisor, high ranking in UN. I'm me. I can live with me to identify ourselves. Like, very often you feel, who are you? I'm an engineer. You're not an engineer. You're a person. You do engineering. This sense of separating ourselves. What we do is not our identity.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I know many people listening will see themselves in that story. After going through that, how do you define health?
Well, I think that one of the things that that experience gave me was that the temporality of life, that it can just disappear. Like one day you can be here and tomorrow you can. And that's given me a real perspective about so often we want to control. I do this, I do that, I do that, I do that. And I did that. Postdoc, PhD, book, job, senior. I did. I went it up. So what does it all mean? It can just fall like a house of cards.
So, health for you now, is it just the absence of illness or something deeper?
I'm a follower of Rumi, and I've actually written a story called Dying Before Death. Poem says there is always chance to be reborn, but to reborn, one must die first. When that ego dies, you can be reborn.
Absolutely. I love that. After all these years of research, storytelling, and life experience, what does success mean to you now? When you look at your younger self, that ambitious, curious student, what would you tell her today?
I would tell her it's okay. You are valuable. You don't have to climb all that ladder to show that you are valuable, that you are valuable because you're a human being. There, you do not have to prove yourself. That's what I would say to my younger me. Not that she would listen.
It is so beautiful. So you have achieved so much academically and personally. But what's something simple in your daily life that makes you feel rich? And when you think about legacy, what do you want people to remember most about your work?
Um, I'm writing stories, and I want that stories to be passed on. There are stories about Iran. I want my cultural heritage to be something that our people are proud of. I also have grandchildren, and I want them to remember their grandmother in a way that's proud.
Absolutely. Definitely they would be proud of you, what you've done and what you've left behind.
I also want other women to hear this. When you have no money, no one to support you, you have all these children to look after, don't give up hope. You'll get there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Bahramitash, you have reached so many summits in your life and overcome some steep climbs. What's next for you now? What's the mountain you still want to climb, personally or creatively?
This is a very good question, and I want to emphasize that. And after I kind of had to walk away from my academic life, I set myself other goals. My goal is to write creative nonfiction. Oh, actually, it's now autofiction. I'm learning a fourth language. Maybe after that, the fifth language. Never stop challenging yourself. Always learn something new. Always keep very busy. I do 2 or 3 hours of personal training. I challenge myself all the time. Never stop.
I love that. Before we wrap up, is there something you've always wanted to talk about, something meaningful to you that you rarely get asked?
Expand your view of the world. Don't let anything define your limitations. Limitations are there to be pushed.
Roxana, thank you for sharing not just your work, but your heart. You've shown us that freedom isn't something handed down. It's built from courage, curiosity, and care. For everyone listening, let this episode be a reminder no matter where you start, there is always a way forward. And as always, keep climbing your own summit. Thank you.